Mayday, mayday. Jack Lawson's voice crackled through the cockpit as the spaceship spiraled downward, flames licking its sides. He gritted his teeth, wrestling with the controls, but the planet's gravity was unrelenting. The impact was brutal. Jack was thrown against his harness as the ship plowed into the alien soil, a cacophony of metal tearing and earth shattering. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a groan, he unbuckled himself and staggered out of the wreckage. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, sweet and pungent, mingling with the acrid stench of burning metal. Vibrant flora surrounded him, towering plants with iridescent leaves and flowers that seemed to glow from within. The ground beneath his boots was soft, almost spongy, absorbing his weight as he moved. Jack surveyed his surroundings, taking stock. His communication equipment was fried, and the ship's hull was beyond repair. He was stranded. Squaring his shoulders, he set off to explore, each step filled with purpose. Survival was his first priority. As he pushed through the dense underbrush, he heard a rustle. Instinctively, his hand went to his sidearm. Emerging from the foliage was a girl, no more than 15, with skin the color of polished bronze and large, luminescent eyes. She watched him warily, her posture both curious and cautious. Jack raised his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice steady. "My ship crashed, and I need help." The girl tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. "You, different." "Not like others," she replied, her accent thick but words clear. "My name's Jack," he continued, slowly lowering his hands. "What's yours?" "Isla," she said after a moment's hesitation. Her gaze flicked to the remains of his ship visible through the trees. "You need help. Come." She turned and gestured for him to follow. Jack hesitated but then decided he had little choice. As they walked, Isla spoke in halting sentences, revealing glimpses of her world. The Asliel, her people, had once been numerous, guided by elders who taught them to harness their abilities. But a catastrophe had struck, leaving the younger generation untrained and vulnerable. They reached a small village nestled in a valley. The structures were simple, woven from the same iridescent plants that populated the forest. Children peeked out from behind doorways, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Isla led him to a central hut, where a few older children gathered, their expressions tense. "He's here to help," Isla announced, her voice carrying an authority that belied her age. "He crashed, but he can teach us." Jack looked around, sensing the weight of their expectations. "I can help," he said, meeting their gazes. "But first, I need to understand what happened here." A boy stepped forward, his face stern. "The Zothar happened," he said. "They come, they take. We can't stop them." Jack nodded, absorbing the gravity of the situation. The Zothar were a formidable threat, and these children, despite their unique abilities, were unprepared. "Then we start with training," Jack declared. "We'll make sure you're ready the next time they come." Isla's eyes sparkled with a mixture of hope and determination. "We will learn. Together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Jack felt a surge of purpose. The stakes were high, and failure was not an option. He was not just fighting for survival anymore, he was fighting for the future of these children and their world. And so, the training began. Jack's heart raced as he saw the ominous shadow of a Zothar scout in the distance, its silhouette menacing against the twilight sky. The village buzzed with activity as Jack and the Asliel girls prepared for their first training session. The air was filled with the scent of alien blossoms and the distant hum of unfamiliar creatures. Jack stood in the center of the clearing, watching Isla and the others assemble with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Listen up," Jack called out, his voice firm but encouraging. "Today, we start learning how to defend ourselves. The Zothar are coming, and we need to be ready." Isla stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We're ready, Jack." Show us what to do. Jack nodded, appreciating her resolve. He began with basic drills, teaching them how to form defensive formations and use their environment to their advantage. The girls' movements were awkward at first, but their innate abilities soon began to shine through. Remember, Jack instructed, use your senses. Feel the ground beneath you, listen to the sounds around you. This planet is your ally. As the sun climbed higher, the girls grew more confident. Isla, in particular, displayed a natural aptitude for strategy, quickly grasping the concepts Jack introduced. They practiced tirelessly, their efforts punctuated by bursts of laughter and moments of frustration. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the valley. Jack's instincts kicked in, and he motioned for the girls to take cover. The sound grew louder, and soon a Zothar scout emerged from the forest, its massive form advancing with menacing speed. Stay hidden. Jack ordered, drawing his sidearm. I'll handle this. Isla's hand gripped his arm. No, we fight together. Jack glanced at her, seeing the fierce determination in her eyes. He nodded reluctantly. All right, but stay close. The Zothar scout crashed into the clearing, its eyes glowing with malice. It towered over them, exuding an aura of brute strength. Jack fired a warning shot, but the creature barely flinched. Spread out. Jack shouted. Use your abilities. The girls fanned out, their movements synchronized. Isla raised her hands, and the ground beneath the Zothar trembled. The creature stumbled, giving Jack a brief window to attack. He fired again, this time hitting its shoulder. The Zothar roared in pain, swinging its massive arm wildly. Isla and the others focused their efforts, using their powers to destabilize the creature. Vines snaked up from the earth, wrapping around its legs. The Zothar struggled, its movements sluggish under the combined assault. Keep going. Jack urged. We have it on the ropes. With a final, coordinated effort, the Asliel girls brought the Zothar to its knees. Jack moved in, delivering a decisive blow that incapacitated the creature. The clearing fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the victors. Jack looked around, pride swelling in his chest. We did it, he said, his voice tinged with awe. You all did amazing. Isla approached, her face flushed with exertion. We did it together, Jack. He smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. Yes, we did. But this is just the beginning. The Zothar will be back, and we need to be ready for when they return. As dusk settled over the valley, the sense of accomplishment was palpable. The Asliel girls had proven their potential, and Jack knew they had taken their first step toward true self-reliance. But the threat of the Zothar loomed large, and their victory today was only a small part of the larger battle that lay ahead. The training would continue, and with each passing day, they would grow stronger. Jack was determined to ensure that when the Zothar returned, the Asliel would be ready to defend their home. The ground trembled as the Zothar forces approached, their war cries echoing through the valley, sending chills down the spines of the Asliel villagers. Jack stood at the forefront, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows that seemed to flicker with the impending threat. Beside him, Isla clenched her fists, her face a mask of determination. The other Asliel girls, now more confident and battle-ready, formed a protective ring around the village. We've trained for this, Jack said, his voice steady. Stay focused, stay together. We can do this. Isla nodded, her eyes never leaving the tree lean where the Zothar would emerge. We will fight, Jack. We are ready. The first of the Zothar warriors broke through the foliage, their hulking forms and glowing eyes a stark contrast to the serene morning light. Jack signaled for the girls to hold their positions. The tension in the air was palpable, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. Now! Jack shouted, as the Zothar charged. The Asliel girls sprang into action. Isla directed the earth beneath the Zothar's feet to shift and buckle, causing the front line to stumble. Jack fired his weapon with precision, taking down the leaders of the charge. The battle quickly turned into a chaotic melee. "Keep moving. Don't let them regroup," Jack called out, his voice cutting through the din of battle. The Asliel girls used their abilities to manipulate the environment, creating obstacles and traps that hindered the Zothar's advance. Vines erupted from the ground, ensnaring limbs and tripping the attackers. Isla and her friends moved with agility and coordination, their training evident in every action. Despite their efforts, the Zothar pressed on, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm. Jack fought fiercely, his military training evident as he took down foe after foe. But it was clear that the Asliel were struggling against the relentless onslaught. "We need to push them back," Jack yelled, rallying the girls. "Focus your attacks." Isla raised her hands, her face a picture of intense concentration. The ground quaked, and a massive fissure opened up, swallowing a group of Zothar warriors. The remaining Asliel girls followed suit, unleashing their powers in a coordinated strike. The Zothar faltered, their advance slowing as confusion spread through their ranks. Jack seized the opportunity, leading a counterattack that pushed the invaders back towards the tree-line. The tide of battle was turning, but the cost was high. Exhaustion was setting in, and several of the girls had sustained injuries. As the Zothar retreated, Jack and the Asliel regrouped. The village was battered, but still standing. Jack surveyed the scene, pride swelling in his chest despite the grim reality. "We did it," Isla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We held them off." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. "Yes, we did. But this was just the first wave. They'll be back, and we need to be ready." Isla nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. "We will be together." The aftermath of the battle left the village in a somber state. The wounded were tended to, and plans were made to fortify defenses. Jack knew they had bought themselves some time, but the real test was still ahead. The Zothar would return, and when they did, the Asliel needed to be even stronger. As the sun set, casting a fiery glow over the recovering village, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. He and the Asliel girls had faced their first true test and emerged victorious. But the road ahead was long, and the stakes had never been higher. Together, they would continue to prepare, ready to defend their home against any threat that dared to challenge them. With the Zothar retreating, Jack and the Asliel stood amidst the wreckage, victorious but wary. The sun cast long shadows, painting the village in hues of orange and red. Jack surveyed the battlefield, his heart pounding with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. The Asliel girls, though battered and bruised, stood tall. Isla, at the forefront, wiped sweat from her brow, her eyes reflecting a fierce determination. "We did it," she murmured, her voice carrying a hint of disbelief. Jack nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes, we did. But this isn't over. They'll regroup and come back stronger." Isla's gaze hardened. "Then we will be ready." Focused content, the villagers began the arduous task of rebuilding. Jack knew that fortifying their defenses was crucial. He assigned roles, ensuring everyone had a part to play. The girls' powers, now more refined, were put to use in reinforcing barriers and setting traps. "We need to think ahead," Jack explained, his tone serious. "The Zothar won't give us another chance if we fail." The tension in the air was palpable, but there was also a sense of unity and resolve. The Asliel were no longer the untrained, fearful group they had been. They had become warriors, capable and strong. Diverse vocabulary. As night fell, the village was illuminated by bioluminescent plants, casting a gentle glow. The scene was almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. Jack gathered the key members, including Isla, around a small fire. Engaging dialogue. "Isla, what do we do now, Jack?" "Jack, we prepare for the worst and hope for the best." But first, we need to recover. Rest is as important as training. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on their faces. The weight of their ordeal was heavy, but so was their spirit. Sensory details, the night air was cool, filled with the chirping of nocturnal creatures. The scent of alien blooms mingled with the smoky aroma of the fire. Jack watched the stars, their unfamiliar constellations a reminder of how far he was from home. Structured flow, over the next few days, the village transformed. Trenches were dug, watchtowers erected, and escape routes planned. Jack worked tirelessly, his experience guiding their efforts. The girls honed their abilities, their control and precision improving with each passing hour. Climax and tension, just as they began to feel a semblance of security, the alarm rang out. Scouts reported a massive Zothar force advancing, more numerous and better equipped than before. The final test was upon them. Jack called the villagers together, his voice calm but firm. This is it. We've trained for this moment. Remember what we've learned, trust in each other, and fight with everything you have. Isla stepped forward, her voice steady. We will fight. For our home, for each other. High-stakes battle, the Zothar attack was swift and brutal. The ground shook as they charged, but the Asliel met them with equal ferocity. Jack led the defense, his strategies turning the tide. Isla and the girls used their powers with precision, creating barriers and launching counterattacks. The battle raged, a maelstrom of chaos and bravery. Jack fought alongside the Asliel, his every move calculated to protect and defend. The Zothar, despite their numbers, were met with an unyielding resistance. Resolution, as dawn broke, the Zothar began to falter. Their advance slowed, then stopped. With a final push, the Asliel drove them back, the invaders retreating into the forest. The villagers erupted in cheers, their victory hard-earned and complete. Jack stood with Isla, both bloodied and exhausted, but victorious. We did it, he said, his voice filled with pride. Isla smiled, a weary but triumphant expression. Yes, Jack. We did. Final world building and closure, the village, though scarred, stood resilient. The Asliel had proven their strength and unity. Jack knew the journey wasn't over, but they had taken a significant step toward securing their future. The sun rose, casting a warm glow over the recovering village. Jack and Isla exchanged a look of mutual respect and determination. Together, they had faced the odds and emerged stronger. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but they were ready to face them, united and unbreakable.